The evening started like any other at Bellini's. The rich smell of garlic and fresh bread filled the air. Crystal glasses caught the light from overhead chandeliers. At the back of the restaurant, a beautiful grand piano sat untouched. More for show than anything else. Lily wiped down the counter, her fingers slightly red from hours of carrying hot plates and ice-cold water pitchers. 6 nights a week for 3 years now, she'd worn the same black pants and crisp white shirt, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. At 26, this wasn't her dream job, but it paid the bills while she took online classes, slowly working toward a music education degree. "Table 14 needs more bread," called Carlos from behind the bar. Lily nodded, quickly filling a basket and weaving between tables with practiced ease. Bellini's was especially busy tonight. A corporate event had booked the private room, and several tables in the main dining area were filled with well-dressed people celebrating birthdays and anniversaries. The tips would be good, but her feet already ached, and it was only 7:30. As she delivered a steaming plate of risotto to table 12, she couldn't help noticing the man sitting alone at the corner table. Even if she hadn't recognized him from business magazines and news shows, Thomas Reynolds stood out. His tailored suit probably cost more than her monthly rent, but it wasn't just his clothes that caught her attention. He had a presence about him, the kind that comes from being listened to, being important. Reynolds was the founder of Reynolds Investments, worth billions according to the financial shows her dad watched religiously. He brought clients to Bellini's occasionally, but tonight he sat alone, staring into his glass of amber-colored scotch as if it held answers to questions only he could hear. What Lily didn't know was that Thomas had just closed a difficult business deal after weeks of tense negotiations. The contract was signed, hands were shaken, but he felt oddly empty about the whole thing. Earlier that day, he had visited his mother at Sunny Pines nursing home, where a young man had volunteered to play piano for the residents. Thomas had watched his mother, who barely recognized him these days, light up tapping her fingers to a melody from her youth. That moment had stuck with him all day, far more meaningful than the millions his company had made in the business deal. Now he sat watching Lily as she hummed quietly to herself, while arranging silverware at an empty table. The tune was vaguely familiar, something classical that his mother might have played, on the old upright piano they had when he was a child. Lily moved through the restaurant with the kind of efficiency that comes from years of practice. Regular customers greeted her by name, and she remembered their usual orders and how they liked their coffee. The kitchen staff respected her because she never blamed them when customers complained about the food, and she always made sure to thank them at the end of her shift. "Looks like we've got a full house tonight," said Wendy, another waitress who had started around the same time as Lily. "Did you see who's at table 9? "Reynolds," Lily replied, arranging water glasses on her tray. "He comes in every few months. Always tips exactly 20%, Wendy said with a slight eye roll. "Not a penny more or less. You'd think with all those billions. Better than the guy at table 5 who tried to leave his phone number instead of a tip last week." Lily laughed. The kitchen doors swung open as Antonio, the restaurant manager, emerged looking slightly flustered. His eyes scanned the dining room and settled on Reynolds' table. "He's fine," Lily assured him. "Just nursing his drink for now." Antonio nodded gratefully. "Keep an eye on him. The owner would have my head if we didn't give him special attention." "Got it," Lily said, though she found the idea somewhat ridiculous. Reynolds put his pants on one leg at a time like everyone else, didn't he? As the evening progressed, Lily fell into the comfortable rhythm of service, taking orders, delivering food, checking on customers, clearing plates. Her mind drifted occasionally to the paper she needed to finish for her music history class, and to her younger brother's upcoming school concert, where he'd be playing cello. He had real talent, unlike her. She'd learned piano as a kid, but never quite had the confidence to perform. Teaching seemed like a better fit, helping others find their musical voice rather than struggling to find her own. Around 9 o'clock, she noticed Reynolds' plate was empty. She approached his table with practiced professionalism. "Can I clear this for you, sir? Would you care for another drink or perhaps dessert?" Reynolds looked up, seeming to really notice her for the first time. His eyes, a sharp, intelligent blue, focused on her face. "You were humming earlier," he said, ignoring her question completely. "Bach's Prelude in C major, wasn't it?" Caught off guard, Lily felt heat rise to her cheeks. She hadn't realized anyone could hear her, let alone identify the piece. "Yes." she admitted. Sorry about that. Old habit. Don't apologize, Reynolds said, the corner of his mouth lifting slightly. It's a beautiful piece. Do you play? A little, she said, suddenly conscious of her worn hands holding his expensive china plate. I'm actually studying music education part-time. Something shifted in Reynolds' expression, a flicker of genuine interest replacing his businessman's mask. He glanced toward the baby grand piano that sat unused in the corner of the restaurant. That piano, he said, nodding toward it. Does anyone play it? Sometimes on weekends they hire someone, Lily explained. Mostly it's just for show. Reynolds was quiet for a moment, swirling the last of his scotch. The ice clinked gently against the crystal. What a waste, he said finally. Instruments should be played, not admired from a distance. Lily found herself nodding in agreement before remembering her place. Yes, sir. Will there be anything else this evening? But Reynolds seemed lost in thought again, his eyes now fixed on the piano. The restaurant had begun to thin out a bit, though several tables were still occupied with lingering diners enjoying their final drinks or desserts. You know, he said suddenly, music was very important in my family when I was growing up. My mother taught piano for 40 years. Lily wasn't sure how to respond to this unexpected personal information. That's wonderful, she said simply. She used to say you could tell everything about a person by how they played, Reynolds continued, as if they were having a normal conversation, not a bizarre exchange between a billionaire and a waitress during a busy dinner service. Technical skill can be learned, but emotional connection, that's something else entirely. Antonio caught Lily's eye from across the room, giving her a questioning look. She gave a small shrug in response. I visited my mother today, Reynolds said, his voice growing quieter. She has Alzheimer's now. Doesn't remember much, not even me most days. But someone played piano at the nursing home and she remembered every note. Tapped her fingers along perfectly. Music stays with us, Lily said softly, forgetting for a moment the difference in their positions. My grandfather had dementia, but he could still sing every word to his favorite songs until the day he died. Reynolds looked at her with new interest. How long have you been studying music? On and off my whole life, she admitted. More seriously for the past few years. I want to teach elementary school music eventually. Not perform. Lily laughed a little. No, definitely not. I get too nervous. The last time I played in front of people was years ago, and it was a disaster. I'm much better behind the scenes. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully, then checked his watch, a timepiece that probably cost more than her car. I should be going, he said, placing his napkin on the table. It was nice talking with you. Lily, she supplied. Lily, he repeated as if testing the name. Like the flower. She nodded, used to the comparison. Reynolds pulled out his wallet and placed his credit card on the table. As Lily reached for it, he asked, That piano, would anyone mind if someone played it right now? Lily hesitated. I'm not sure. We don't have a scheduled performer tonight. I wasn't asking about a scheduled performer, Reynolds said, his eyes meeting hers with unexpected intensity. I was asking if you would play. The question caught her completely off guard. For a moment she thought she had misheard him. Me? No, I couldn't possibly. I'm working and I haven't practiced and… Just one piece, Reynolds interrupted. Your choice. Lily looked around the restaurant nervously. Sir, I appreciate the thought, but I don't think my manager would… I'll speak with your manager, Reynolds said with the casual confidence of someone used to getting his way. One piece, Lily, what harm could it do? Before she could formulate a response, he added, I'll make it worth your while. $10,000 to the music program of your choice. Lily nearly dropped the credit card she was holding. What, I'm sorry, did you say $10,000? I did, Reynolds confirmed, his expression impossible to read. Consider it a challenge. You clearly love music. I'm curious to hear how you play. The other diners nearby had begun to take notice of their conversation. Antonio was watching from his position near the hostess stand, clearly wondering what was happening. Why would you do that? Lily asked, genuinely confused. You don't even know me. Reynolds was quiet for a moment, considering her question. Let's just say I've had a day that's made me think about what really matters. Money, I have plenty, but moments that move people, those are rarer than you might think. Lily stood frozen, her heart suddenly racing. The thought of playing that piano in front of actual people with no preparation made her palms instantly sweaty. She hadn't performed in public since that terrible recital during her freshman year of college, when she'd frozen mid-piece and had to leave the stage. The memory still made her stomach tighten with shame. But $10,000. The music program at Jefferson Elementary, where she volunteered twice a month, had been threatened with budget cuts. The kids were using decades-old instruments held together with tape and hope. That kind of money could transform everything for them. Reynolds watched her internal struggle with interest, his head slightly tilted. Sometimes, he said quietly, the most important opportunities in life come disguised as moments we'd rather avoid. Something in his tone suggested this wasn't merely entertainment for him. There seemed to be a deeper purpose behind his strange request. His eyes, when they met hers, held an unexpected kindness. Lily took a deep breath, thinking of the children at Jefferson Elementary, their faces lighting up when they made music together, even on broken-down instruments. One piece, she said finally, her voice barely audible over the restaurant's ambient noise. Antonio was at their table within seconds, his professional smile barely hiding his concern. Is everything all right here? He asked, looking between Lily and Reynolds. Reynolds extended his hand. Thomas Reynolds. I was hoping your waitress might play a piece on that piano. I understand it's an unusual request, but I'm willing to make it worth everyone's while. Antonio's eyebrows shot up. The piano? Well, sir, we occasionally have professional musicians, but I'm aware. Reynolds cut in smoothly, and I'm offering a $10,000 donation to a music program of Lily's choice if she'll play just one piece. Antonio blinked rapidly, processing this information. He glanced at Lily, who stood clutching her serving tray like a shield. You play piano? He asked, sounding genuinely surprised. Yes, Lily admitted. I'm studying music education. Antonio looked around the restaurant. It was past the dinner rush now. Most tables were finishing their meals or enjoying after-dinner drinks. The corporate party in the private room had grown louder, their laughter occasionally spilling into the main dining area. Mr. Reynolds, Antonio began diplomatically, while we're honored by your generous offer, our staff doesn't typically. Reynolds reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, handing it to Antonio. Call this number if you have any concerns about the legitimacy of my offer. That's my personal assistant. She can transfer the funds immediately to whatever account you specify. Antonio stared at the card, then looked back at Reynolds with new respect. That won't be necessary, sir. If Lily is willing, I don't see the harm in one piece. Now both men turned to Lily, waiting for her answer. She felt her chest tighten. The thought of walking to that piano, of sitting down in front of all these people who had just been enjoying their meals with no expectation of a performance, made her stomach flip. I haven't practiced, she said weakly. And I'm in my work uniform. Nobody cares about that, Reynolds said, his voice gentler than before. This isn't a concert hall. It's just a restaurant piano that's gathering dust. A few nearby diners had noticed the conversation and were watching with curious expressions. Wendy caught Lily's eye from across the room and mouthed, What's going on? Lily took a deep breath. $10,000. For kids who had so little. What was a few minutes of discomfort compared to that? One piece, she said finally. But I choose which one. Reynolds smiled, a genuine smile that transformed his face from serious businessman to something warmer, more approachable. Of course, whatever you're comfortable with. Antonio touched her arm lightly. Are you sure about this, Lily? You don't have to. It's fine, she said, though her voice betrayed her nerves. For $10,000 to Jefferson Elementary's music program. I can manage one song. Antonio squeezed her shoulder supportively. Take your time. I'll hold your tables. As Lily set down her tray behind the bar, Wendy rushed over. What's happening? She whispered. Why is Antonio letting you take a break during dinner service? Apparently, Lily said, her voice slightly unsteady. I'm going to play the piano. Wendy's eyes widened. You're what? Since when do you play piano? Since I was 8, Lily replied, untying her apron with trembling fingers. But I haven't performed in years. Not since that disaster in college, Wendy finished for her. They'd been roommates then, too. Wendy had been there for the aftermath of that recital, Lily in tears vowing never to play in public again. Reynolds is donating $10,000 if I play, Lily explained. Wendy's mouth dropped open. Are you serious? That's insane. What does he get out of it? Lily shrugged. I have no idea. Maybe he's just bored. Or maybe he's secretly a talent scout, Wendy suggested with a grin. This could be your big break. Very funny, Lily replied dryly. More likely he's just an eccentric rich guy who enjoys putting service workers on the spot. She took a deep breath and smoothed down her uniform shirt. How do I look? Like someone who's about to earn a $10,000 tip, Wendy said with an encouraging smile. You've got this. Just pretend no one's watching. Lily nodded, though they both knew that was impossible advice to follow. As she stepped out from behind the bar, she noticed Reynolds had moved to a better vantage point. Antonio was near the piano, gently removing the decorative items that had been placed on its closed lid. The walk from the bar to the piano seemed to take forever. With each step, Lily felt more eyes turning toward her. The conversational hum of the restaurant began to quiet as people noticed something unusual was happening. The piano was beautiful, a glossy black Steinway that probably cost more than she'd make in 10 years. As Antonio lifted the fall board to reveal the keys, Lily wondered when it had last been tuned. Too late to worry about that now. She sat down on the bench, adjusting its height slightly. The keys looked impossibly white under the restaurant's dim lighting. She placed her hands in her lap, trying to steady their trembling. What should she play? Her mind raced through possibilities. Something impressive and technical might seem like she was showing off. Something too simple might suggest she wasn't worth the money. She'd been practicing Chopin lately for her piano proficiency exam, but those pieces required a precision she wasn't sure she could manage with her nerves. She looked up and caught Reynolds watching her, his expression unreadable. Beyond him, the other diners had mostly stopped eating, their attention now focused on the waitress at the piano. Wendy gave her a thumbs up from near the kitchen door. Antonio stood a few feet away, looking both nervous and curious. Lily closed her eyes. What did she want to play? Not what would impress others or what seemed appropriate for the occasion, but what did her heart want to express in this moment? The answer came to her suddenly, clear as a bell. She'd play what she loved, what had comforted her through difficult times. Debussy's Clair de Lune, a piece about moonlight, about finding beauty in darkness. She positioned her fingers over the keys, took a deep breath, and began to play. The first notes were tentative, slightly uneven as her hands adjusted to the piano's action, but as the familiar melody began to take shape, something shifted inside her. The restaurant, the watching eyes, even Reynolds and his strange challenge, all began to fade away. There was only the music, flowing from her fingers like water. The piano was surprisingly responsive, its tone rich and resonant. As Lily leaned into the gentle swells of the piece, her body relaxed, moving naturally with the phrases she had played countless times in practice rooms and on her old keyboard at home. She forgot about her work uniform, about the table she should be clearing, about the papers due for class. For those moments, she was just a musician again, speaking through her instrument in a language more honest than words. The restaurant had fallen completely silent. Even the noisy corporate party in the private room had quieted, their door now open as people peered out to see what was happening. The kitchen staff stood in the doorway watching with surprised expressions. Carlos, who had worked with Lily for 3 years, mouthed wow to no one in particular. As the piece built to its climax, Lily's fingers moved with increasing confidence, drawing out the delicate harmonies with a sensitivity that spoke of years of practice and genuine emotional connection to the music. This was why she had fallen in love with the piano as a child. Its ability to transform emotion into sound, to say things that words couldn't express. The last delicate notes lingered in the air, and Lily kept her foot on the sustain pedal, letting them fade naturally into silence. For a moment she stayed perfectly still, eyes closed, reluctant to break the spell. Then the applause began. It started with one person, Reynolds, and quickly spread throughout the restaurant. It wasn't polite, perfunctory clapping, but genuine enthusiastic appreciation. Several people had risen to their feet. An elderly couple at a nearby table exchanged meaningful glances, the woman wiping away a tear. Lily opened her eyes, momentarily disoriented by the response. She hadn't expected this, hadn't allowed herself to imagine anything beyond getting through the piece without a major mistake. Wendy was beaming at her from across the room. Antonio was applauding with a look of astonished respect. Carlos and the other kitchen staff whistled and cheered, and Reynolds, the man who had started all this, was approaching the piano with an expression she couldn't quite read. It wasn't the smug satisfaction of someone who had won a bet, or the amused condescension she might have expected. Instead, he looked genuinely moved. That, he said as he reached her, his voice carrying in the still applauding room, was extraordinary. Lily felt her cheeks flush. "Thank you," she managed, unsure what else to say. Reynolds turned to address the restaurant. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, and the applause gradually quieted. What you just witnessed wasn't simply talent, but courage. Lily hasn't performed publicly in years, yet she took a chance tonight. She looked at him in surprise. How had he known that? "I promised $10,000 to a music program of her choice," then Reynolds continued. "But I'm amending that to $50,000, plus a scholarship to complete her music education degree." The room gasped collectively. Lily's hand flew to her mouth, certain she had misheard him. "50,000? She whispered. That's too much. You don't even know me." Reynolds smiled, a gentle expression that completely transformed his face. "Sometimes you don't need to know someone's life story to recognize their gift," he said. "And sometimes a moment of music can tell you everything you need to know about a person." The restaurant buzzed with excited conversation. Customers who had come for a quiet dinner were now witnesses to something extraordinary. Not just a beautiful performance, but a life-changing moment unfolding before their eyes. Lily stood frozen by the piano, trying to process what Reynolds had just said. $50,000? A full scholarship? It seemed impossible, like something from a movie, not something that happened to ordinary people like her. "I don't understand," she finally managed to say, her voice barely audible over the continuing murmurs of the crowd. "Why would you do this?" Reynolds gestured to a nearby chair. "May I?" Lily nodded, and they both sat down, creating a small island of quiet amid the excitement around them. "My mother was a piano teacher for 40 years, Reynolds began, his voice softer now, meant only for her. "She taught in a small studio in our home, charging $5 a lesson when she started. She believed everyone deserved access to music education, regardless of their ability to pay. She'd often teach children for free if their families couldn't afford it." He paused, looking past Lily toward the piano. "When I was young, I resented those lessons. All those children coming through our house, the constant sound of scales and simple tunes being practiced over and over. I wanted a normal home, not a music school." Lily listened, still trying to make sense of this unexpected turn in her evening. "I stopped appreciating what she did," Reynolds continued. "I grew up, went to business school, built my company. I'd call her once a week, send flowers on her birthday, visit when I could. But I never really acknowledged the impact she had on hundreds of students over the years." He rubbed his hand across his face, suddenly looking tired. 3 years ago, she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. It progressed quickly. Now she rarely recognizes me. But today, when that young man played piano at the nursing home, I watched her come alive again. Her fingers moved in perfect time to the music, muscle memory outlasting everything else. "I'm so sorry," Lily said softly. Reynolds shook his head. "Don't be. It was actually a beautiful moment. It made me realize that what my mother gave those students, what she tried to give me, was something far more valuable and lasting than anything I've built." "Music stays when everything else fades." Lily nodded, thinking of her own grandmother, who had sung old folk songs until her final days. "When I came here tonight and heard you humming Bach," Reynolds continued, "something clicked. Then when you mentioned teaching music to children, it just felt right. Like the universe was giving me a chance to honor my mother's legacy." "But $50,000, Lily protested. "That's a drop in the bucket for me," Reynolds finished for her. "But I know it can transform a school's music program. And the scholarship? Consider it an investment in all the future students you'll teach." Before Lily could respond, Antonio approached with a concerned expression. "I hate to interrupt, Mr. Reynolds, but we have a situation. There are several people filming right now, and I'm not sure about our policy on—" Reynolds waved away his concern. "It's fine. Let them." Antonio looked to Lily, who nodded her agreement, still somewhat dazed by the whole situation. Wendy appeared at Lily's side, handing her a glass of water. "Thought you might need this," she whispered. "Also, you're basically famous now. People are already posting videos online." Lily took a sip of water, suddenly aware of how dry her mouth was. The reality of what had just happened, of what was still happening, began to sink in. She had played piano in front of a restaurant full of strangers. People had filmed it. Reynolds had just pledged an enormous sum of money based on a 5-minute performance. "I need to call the principal at Jefferson Elementary," she said, the practical part of her brain finally kicking in. "And I should talk to my program advisor at the university." Reynolds pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "Have them contact my assistant tomorrow. She'll handle all the details. We'll make sure everything is properly arranged." A middle-aged woman approached their table somewhat tentatively. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, "but I wanted to tell you how beautiful that was. My late husband was a pianist, and that was his favorite piece. Hearing you play it tonight," her voice caught slightly. "It was like having a piece of him back just for a moment." Lily felt a lump form in her throat. "Thank you for telling me that." As the woman returned to her table, other diners began to approach, each with their own reactions to share. An older man confessed he'd never appreciated classical music before, but would now look up more Debussy. A young couple asked if she gave piano lessons. A little girl, there with her parents for a birthday dinner, wanted to know how long it would take to learn to play like that. For 15 minutes, Lily spoke with one person after another, each conversation filling her with a growing sense of wonder. Music had touched these people in ways she hadn't imagined possible in such a casual setting. This wasn't a formal recital hall with an audience who had come specifically to hear classical piano. These were ordinary people out for dinner who had unexpectedly connected with something beautiful. Reynolds watched these interactions with a slight smile, occasionally checking his phone but making no move to leave. Antonio had brought him a fresh drink and was now managing the flow of people approaching their table, ensuring Lily wasn't overwhelmed. When there was finally a break in the procession of well-wishers, Lily turned back to Reynolds. "I still can't believe this is happening. Sometimes the most extraordinary moments come when we least expect them," he replied. "I certainly didn't plan this when I walked in tonight." Lily's phone buzzed in her pocket, a text from her brother. "Paul." She checked it quickly. "Why is there a video of you playing piano at work going viral?" She stared at the screen in disbelief. "Viral?" Wendy leaned over her shoulder to look. "Oh, wow, that was fast. Let me check." She pulled out her own phone, tapped and scrolled for a few seconds, then turned the screen toward Lily. 30,000 views already. Someone with a lot of followers must have shared it. Lily felt a flutter of panic. Her small, private moment was rapidly becoming very public. "I don't know if I'm ready for this," she admitted. Reynolds regarded her thoughtfully. "Fame wasn't part of the deal, I know. But perhaps this is an opportunity too." "What do you mean?" Lily asked. "The world is full of talented musicians," Reynolds said. "But your story, a waitress unexpectedly playing beautiful music, someone with dreams of teaching children, that resonates with people. It reminds them that extraordinary gifts often exist in ordinary places, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed." Lily considered this. She had never thought of herself as particularly gifted. She'd worked hard at piano, certainly, but had always believed her real talent lay in teaching, in helping others discover their own musical voices. "I should get back to work," she said, suddenly remembering she was still on shift. "I have tables waiting." Antonio shook his head firmly. "Absolutely not. Consider yourself off for the rest of the night with pay. This is the most excitement Bellini's has seen in years. The owner just called and he's thrilled." "The owner called?" Lily asked, surprised. "Apparently someone he knows was having dinner here and called him about the impromptu concert," Antonio explained. "He says it's the best publicity we could ask for." As if to confirm this, the hostess approached to inform them that they had just received 3 calls from people wanting to make reservations and asking if there would be piano music. Reynolds chuckled. "It seems you've created quite a stir." Just then, the door to the restaurant opened and a slender woman in a stylish coat entered, scanning the room until she spotted Reynolds. She approached quickly, tablet in hand. "Mr. Reynolds, your next appointment?" She began, but stopped when she saw his expression. "Cancel it, Grace," Reynolds said. "In fact, clear the rest of my evening." Grace looked surprised but nodded efficiently. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "Everything is excellent," Reynolds replied with a genuine smile. "I've just witnessed something remarkable, and I'd like to celebrate properly." He turned to Lily. "That is, if you'd be willing to join me for a late dinner." There's much to discuss about the foundation and scholarship arrangements. Lily hesitated, overwhelmed by everything that had happened in the past hour. I should probably call my brother and the school principal first. Of course, Reynolds said. Take all the time you need. Grace looked between them curiously. Reynolds quickly explained what had transpired, and Grace's professional demeanor softened. Like your mother's scholarship fund, she said quietly. Reynolds nodded. Exactly like that, but bigger. Lily excused herself to call her brother, stepping into the quiet hallway near the restrooms. Paul answered on the first ring. What is happening? He demanded without preamble. There's a video of you playing piano at Bellini's all over social media. My friends are texting me about it. It's a long story, Lily said, laughing slightly at the absurdity of it all. But the short version is, a customer dared me to play the restaurant's piano, and now he's donating $50,000 to Jefferson Elementary's music program. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Are you serious? Paul finally asked, completely serious. He's also offering me a scholarship to finish my degree. I'm still trying to process it all. This is insane, Paul said, his voice full of wonder. In a good way, but still insane. Who is this guy? Thomas Reynolds. The investment guy, another pause. The Thomas Reynolds? The billionaire? I guess so, Lily replied, the reality of it all still sinking in. He says his mother was a piano teacher. Well, that explains a lot, Paul said. Wow, Lil, just wow. Mom is going to flip out. She always said your playing was special. Lily smiled, thinking of their mother who had worked extra shifts to pay for piano lessons all those years ago. I should call her too. She's actually here with me. We're both staring at this video in disbelief. Want me to put her on? As Lily spoke with her mother, explaining the evening's events as best she could, she felt a strange mixture of emotions. Excitement, disbelief, gratitude, and an unexpected sense of validation. For years she had kept her music private, convinced that performance wasn't her path. Now one unexpected moment had opened doors she hadn't even known existed. When she returned to the main dining room, she found Reynolds chatting amicably with Antonio, while Wendy showed Grace some of the social media posts about the performance. Everything okay? Reynolds asked as she approached. Lily nodded, a new certainty in her expression. Everything's great. And yes, I'd be happy to join you for dinner. We have a lot to talk about. Reynolds had arranged for a quiet table in the corner of the restaurant. By now, most of the regular dinner crowd had left, though a few people lingered, some still casting curious glances in Lily's direction. Antonio had insisted on serving them himself, bringing out special dishes that weren't even on the menu. The chef is inspired tonight, he explained as he set down 2 plates of perfectly seared scallops. He says music always makes food taste better. Lily smiled, though her mind was still racing to keep up with the evening's events. Just hours ago, she had been a regular waitress going through the motions of another shift. Now she was having dinner with one of the wealthiest men in the country, discussing a donation that would transform Jefferson Elementary's music program and a scholarship that would change her own life. You've barely touched your wine, Reynolds observed. Not to your taste. Oh, it's fine, Lily assured him. I'm just processing everything. It's a lot to take in, Reynolds nodded. I understand. I tend to move quickly once I've made a decision, which can be overwhelming for others. We can slow down if you prefer. Lily took a sip of the wine, a crisp white that probably cost more than she made in a day. No, it's not that. I'm grateful, truly. It's just hard to understand why me. Why tonight? Sometimes the universe aligns in unexpected ways, Reynolds said, cutting into a scallop. I've been thinking about establishing a music foundation for months, ever since my mother's condition worsened. I've had my team researching different approaches, but something was missing. The personal connection, I suppose. He paused, considering his next words carefully. Then tonight, hearing you hum Bach while setting tables, watching you gather your courage to play, it felt right in a way that spreadsheets and proposals never did. But you don't even know if I'm a good teacher, Lily pointed out. Reynolds smiled. I know you're studying music education while working full-time. I know you volunteer at an underfunded elementary school. And I know you play piano with genuine emotion, which is rarer than you might think. Those things tell me enough. As they ate, Reynolds explained his vision for the donation to Jefferson Elementary, It wouldn't just be a one-time gift, but the establishment of a sustained music program with dedicated funding for 5 years. There would be money for instruments, sheet music, classroom supplies, and even field trips to concerts. The principal will be shocked, Lily said, imagining Ms. Chen's reaction. Last month, she was telling me they might have to cut music classes to half-time next year because of budget issues. And the children? How many are in the program? Reynolds asked. About 200 across all grade levels, Lily replied. But with proper funding, it could be so much more. There's no instrument lending program currently, so kids whose families can't afford to rent or buy instruments are limited to singing and basic rhythm instruments. Reynolds nodded, making a note on his phone. We'll change that. Every child who wants to learn should have the opportunity. As Antonio cleared their plates and brought dessert, a delicate lemon tart, Lily's phone buzzed again. She checked it discreetly. Sorry, she said. It's the principal. She must have heard about what happened. By all means, Reynolds said, gesturing for her to take the call. Lily stepped away from the table and answered. Ms. Chen was practically breathless with excitement. Lily, I just got a call from a parent whose child goes to our school. She was at Bellini's tonight and saw everything. Is it true? $50,000 for our music program? It's true, Lily confirmed. Mr. Reynolds wants to set up a 5-year funding plan, not just a one-time donation. There was a moment of silence, then what sounded suspiciously like a sniffle. You have no idea what this means, Ms. Chen said, her voice thick with emotion. We were weeks away from voting on which programs to cut. Music was at the top of the list despite my objections. I know, Lily said softly, but that's not going to happen now. This is a miracle, Ms. Chen declared. And those videos of you playing. Lily, why didn't you ever tell us you were so talented? The music teacher showed me one just now. She's beside herself with excitement. By the time Lily returned to the table, Reynolds had paid the bill and was chatting with Grace, who had joined him. Everything okay? He asked as Lily sat down. More than okay. The principal is ecstatic. Apparently the music program was about to be cut. Reynolds shook his head. It's shameful how arts education is always the first to go when budgets get tight. As if teaching children to appreciate beauty and express themselves is somehow less important than standardized tests. Grace cleared her throat gently. I've made the arrangements as you requested, sir. The foundation paperwork will be ready by morning, and I've scheduled a meeting with the financial advisors to discuss the scholarship details. Excellent, Reynolds said. And the other matter? Grace nodded. All taken care of. The car will be here in 20 minutes. Reynolds turned back to Lily. I hope you don't mind, but I've arranged for a car to take you home tonight. It's getting late, and after the excitement of the evening, you shouldn't have to worry about public transportation. That's very kind, Lily said. But it's unnecessary. I usually just take the bus. It's not far. Humor me, Reynolds said with a smile. Consider it part of the celebration. As they finished their dessert, Reynolds shared more about his mother's teaching career and her belief that music was essential for developing young minds. The way he spoke about her, with reverence and a touch of regret, made it clear how much he valued her work, even if he hadn't always shown it. She would have loved you, he said unexpectedly. Your passion for teaching, your dedication to those children at Jefferson, it's exactly what she valued. Before Lily could respond, Antonio approached with a small, elegantly wrapped package. From the owner, he explained, handing it to Lily. He asked me to give you this, along with his highest compliments. Lily carefully unwrapped the package to find a small silver music box. When she opened it, it played the opening notes of Clair de Lune. How did he? She began, puzzled. Antonio smiled. He has connections. When he heard what happened, he made some calls.
He said to tell you there will always be a place for you at Bellini's, whether as staff or as our featured pianist. Lily ran her fingers over the delicate silver engravings on the music box.
It's beautiful. Please thank him for me. As they prepared to leave, Lily was surprised to find several staff members waiting to say goodbye. Not just Wendy and Carlos, but kitchen workers she rarely interacted with, the hostess, even the stern-faced dishwasher who rarely spoke to anyone. That was some playing, the dishwasher said gruffly, shaking her hand. My grandmother played piano. You reminded me of her. Outside, a sleek black car was waiting. The driver stepped out to open the door as Reynolds and Lily approached. This is where we part ways for tonight, Reynolds said. The driver has your address. Grace will contact you tomorrow about the foundation and scholarship details. I don't know how to thank you, Lily said, suddenly feeling the weight of everything that had happened. This is life-changing, not just for me, but for hundreds of children. Reynolds considered her words for a moment. If you want to thank me, do this. Remember tonight the next time you doubt yourself. Remember that your music moved an entire restaurant of strangers. Remember that your passion for teaching inspired a jaded businessman to reconnect with his mother's legacy. He smiled. And perhaps when you're a famous music educator with books and TED Talks, mention me in the acknowledgments. Lily laughed. I promise. As the car pulled away from the curb, Lily watched Reynolds and Grace walk toward a different vehicle. For all his wealth and power, there had been something deeply human about him tonight. A glimpse of the son who still missed his mother. The boy who had grown up surrounded by music lessons. The driver was respectfully quiet during the ride, allowing Lily to scroll through her phone with growing amazement. The videos of her performance had indeed gone viral, with hundreds of thousands of views across different platforms. Comments poured in from people touched by the unexpected moment of beauty in an ordinary restaurant. Never judge a book by its cover. You never know who might be a hidden genius. This made me cry. My dad had Alzheimer's, and music was the only thing that reached him near the end. I'm calling my old piano teacher tomorrow to say thank you. By the time the car pulled up to her apartment building, Lily had received messages from college friends she hadn't spoken to in years, former piano teachers, even her elementary school music teacher who had first noticed her interest in piano. Her small apartment felt different somehow when she entered it. Not physically changed, but charged with new possibility. The keyboard she had pushed against the wall, often too tired after work to practice, seemed to call to her. She sat down and played a few experimental notes, then found herself playing Clair de Lune again, this time just for herself. When she finished, her roommate Katie was standing in the doorway of their shared living room, a mug of tea in her hands. So, Katie said with a smile, "Want to explain why you're all over the internet tonight?" Lily laughed, the sound bubbling up from somewhere deep inside her. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." "Try me," Katie replied, settling into their worn couch. "I've got time." So Lily told her everything, about Reynolds and his challenge, about the restaurant falling silent, about the $50,000 donation and the scholarship and the car ride home. As she spoke, the events of the evening began to feel more real, not just a strange dream she'd had while folding napkins at work. "What happens now?" Katie asked when Lily had finished her story. Lily looked at the keyboard, then at the small silver music box, and finally at the pile of textbooks on music education she'd been studying between shifts. "Now," she said with newfound certainty, "I stop hiding. I finish my degree. I help build an amazing music program at Jefferson Elementary, and I play, not just for myself but for anyone who wants to listen." She ran her fingers lightly over the keys. "All because a sad billionaire missed his mom and heard me humming Bach while I set tables." Katie raised her mug in a toast. "To the strange ways life changes when we least expect it," Lily smiled. "To music that stays when everything else fades." 3 months later, Lily stood in the newly renovated music room at Jefferson Elementary, watching as children excitedly explored the instruments arranged around the space. Brand new keyboards lined one wall. A set of gleaming recorders sat in custom-built shelving, and various percussion instruments filled colorful bins. In the corner, protected by a clear case when not in use, sat a baby grand piano, smaller than the one at Bellini's but perfectly sized for the space. Miss Lily called a small girl named Zoe, who was carefully plucking at a violin. "Can you show me again how to hold the bow?" Lily smiled and knelt beside her, gently adjusting the child's fingers. "Like this," she demonstrated. "Not too tight. Pretend you're holding a little bird, firmly enough that it doesn't fly away, but gently enough that you don't hurt it." Zoe's face scrunched in concentration as she tried to copy the position. "Like this?" "That's perfect," Lily encouraged. "Now try drawing it across the strings just like we practiced." The sound that emerged was scratchy and uncertain, but Zoe beamed with pride. "I did it!" Ms. Chen appeared in the doorway, watching the scene with evident satisfaction. In the 3 months since Reynolds's donation had become official, the transformation of Jefferson Elementary's music program had been nothing short of remarkable. What had once been a struggling program on the verge of being cut was now the school's pride and joy, with proper instruments, teaching materials, and most importantly, enough time in the curriculum for children to genuinely develop their skills. "The news crew is here," Ms. Chen informed Lily. "Are you ready?" Lily nodded, though her stomach fluttered with nerves. The local news station was doing a feature on the school's revitalized music program, and both she and Reynolds would be interviewed. Her life had changed so dramatically since that night at Bellini's that sometimes she still had trouble believing it wasn't all an elaborate dream. "Children," Ms. Chen called, clapping her hands for attention. "Please put the instruments away carefully, just like Miss Lily taught you. Then line up at the door. Remember, best behavior for the cameras." As the children scurried to follow instructions, Lily straightened her blouse and took a deep breath. The past months had been a whirlwind of activity. Reynolds had been true to his word and then some. Beyond the initial donation to Jefferson Elementary, he had established the Reynolds Music Foundation, dedicated to supporting music education in underfunded schools across the city. Lily, while continuing her own studies, had been hired as the foundation's first program coordinator, allowing her to leave her waitressing job at Bellini's, though she still visited often, sometimes playing piano for the dinner crowd on weekend evenings. The viral video of her performance had led to other opportunities as well. She'd been invited to speak at a conference on arts education, had done 2 local television appearances, and had even been contacted by a publisher interested in a book about making music accessible to all children. The attention had been overwhelming at times, but Lily had learned to focus on what mattered most: the children whose lives were being changed through access to music education. Outside in the school courtyard, a small stage had been set up for the event. Parents, teachers, and community members gathered on folding chairs. A banner reading "Jefferson Elementary Celebrates Music" hung from the school building. Lily spotted Reynolds near the front, speaking quietly with grace. He caught her eye and gave her an encouraging nod. The ceremony began with brief remarks from Ms. Chen, followed by a performance from the children, a simple but heartfelt rendition of Ode to Joy on their new instruments. Despite the occasional wrong note or missed entrance, the audience applauded enthusiastically. Lily felt a swell of pride as she watched her students bow, their faces glowing with accomplishment. Then it was time for the interviews. The reporter, a friendly woman with a warm smile, positioned Lily and Reynolds side by side. "Mr. Reynolds," she began once the cameras were rolling, "what inspired you to make such a generous donation to Jefferson Elementary's music program?" Reynolds glanced at Lily before answering. "Sometimes inspiration comes from unexpected places. I walked into a restaurant one evening and heard a waitress humming Bach as she set tables. That simple moment reconnected me to my own childhood, to my mother who taught piano for decades. When I later discovered that the waitress, Lily here, was studying music education and volunteering at this school, it felt like the universe was sending a very clear message. And that led to not just this donation, but the creation of your foundation," the reporter prompted. Reynolds nodded. "The Reynolds Music Foundation honors my mother's belief that every child deserves access to quality music education, regardless of their financial circumstances. We're starting with 5 schools this year, and hope to expand to 20 within 3 years." The reporter turned to Lily. "And how has this changed your life? You've gone from waitress to viral pianist to program coordinator in just a few months." Lily smiled, remembering her conversation with Reynolds the night of her impromptu performance. "It's been incredible, but the most meaningful change has been seeing the children's faces when they create music for the first time. That moment when a child who never had access to an instrument before realizes they can make something beautiful. There's nothing like it. Would you play for us today?" the reporter asked. Though the request had been anticipated, Lily still felt a flutter of nerves. She had played publicly several times since that night at Bellini's, but each performance still required a moment of courage. "I'd be happy to," she said, moving to the keyboard that had been set up on stage. As she positioned her fingers on the keys, she caught Reynolds' eye again. He gave her a subtle thumbs up and she smiled in return. Then she began to play, not Clair de Lune this time, but a piece she had composed herself, inspired by the children she taught. It was simpler than Debussy, with a clear, hopeful melody that built gradually to a joyful conclusion. When she finished, The children cheered loudly, some jumping up and down with excitement. The adults applauded with equal enthusiasm. Lily had come to realize that audiences responded not just to technical skill, but to the genuine emotion behind the music. That was something she had always had, even when she doubted herself. After the ceremony, as people mingled and enjoyed refreshments, Reynolds approached her. "That was a beautiful piece," he said. "Your own composition?" Lily nodded. "I've been writing music again, something I hadn't done since college." "My mother would be proud," Reynolds said quietly. "Not just of what you're doing for these children, but of how you've embraced your own gift." Before Lily could respond, they were interrupted by Zoe tugging insistently at her hand. "Miss Lily, can I play something for Mr. Reynolds? Please, I've been practicing really hard." Lily looked to Reynolds, who crouched down to the child's level. "I would be honored to hear you play, Zoe." The little girl beamed and ran to the keyboard, her small fingers positioning themselves with careful deliberation. The piece she played was simple. Twinkle, twinkle, little star with basic chords, but she played it with such concentration and pride that it might as well have been a concerto. When she finished, Reynolds applauded as enthusiastically as he had for Lily. "Magnificent," he declared, making Zoe giggle with delight. As the child ran off to tell her friends about her performance for the famous rich man, Reynolds turned back to Lily. "This is why we do it," he said simply. Lily nodded, understanding perfectly. Later that evening, after the news crew had packed up and the children had gone home, Lily sat alone in the music room, running her fingers lightly over the keys of the baby grand piano. On the wall hung framed photos, one of the viral moment at Bellini's, another of the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the new music room, and a third of Reynolds with his mother from years ago, both seated at a piano. The door opened softly and Ms. Chen entered. "Quite a day," she said, sitting beside Lily on the piano bench. "Quite a few months," Lily agreed with a smile. "You know," Ms. Chen said thoughtfully, "when I first became principal here, I had such big dreams for these children. But year after year, budget cuts and shifting priorities chipped away at those dreams. I started to believe that some things just weren't possible." She gestured around the well-equipped room. "You proved me wrong." "Not me," Lily corrected. "Mr. Reynolds," Ms. Chen shook her head firmly. "No, it was you. Reynolds has money, yes, but money alone doesn't create this kind of change. It takes heart, vision, and genuine love for both music and children. You had all of that long before he walked into that restaurant." Lily considered this. It was true that she had been volunteering at Jefferson for 2 years before the donation, bringing what music she could to the children with extremely limited resources. "I suppose we all contributed in our own way," she acknowledged. "That's a diplomatic answer," Ms. Chen laughed. "But I'm serious, Lily. Never underestimate the impact you had both on Reynolds and on these children. One person with passion can start a ripple that becomes a wave." After Ms. Chen left, Lily remained at the piano, thinking about the strange journey that had brought her here. If Reynolds hadn't come to Bellini's that night, if he hadn't heard her humming, if he hadn't issued his challenge. So many coincidences had aligned to create this outcome. Yet perhaps it wasn't just coincidence. Perhaps it was what happened when passion met opportunity, when hidden talents were finally given space to shine. She began to play again, softly, a melody that had been forming in her mind all day. It would be her next composition. Something about unexpected moments and the courage to seize them. About music that remains when everything else fades. Outside the music room window, the sun was setting, casting a golden glow across the schoolyard where children would gather again tomorrow, eager to create beauty in a world that so desperately needed it. Lily smiled as her fingers found the notes. Each one a promise, each one a possibility. Just like the children she taught. Just like the unexpected turns in life that sometimes, miraculously, lead exactly where we're meant to go.